There you go. So welcome everyone to our fifth Ocean of Data Challenge, exploring ocean and climate text data, starting today and then ending in 2 weeks on February 27th at the same time, where you'll hopefully be presenting your fabulous ideas. I'm going to go just quickly over today's agenda. So we're just going to do quick intros of the different organizations hosting this challenge, intro to the challenge, give you an idea of what's happening so you can keep in mind as we have our speakers go and give their little presentations. They'll speak about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have some question and answers at the end if you have any questions for our speakers or to clarify something or curious about what they spoke. And then they can sign off if they like, but they're welcome to stay on because afterwards we're just going to be reviewing the challenge one more time, talking about data, and then taking any questions the participants may have. So that's how it's going to go today. This will be also recorded. We're currently recording right now, and I'll be uploading it to YouTube later tonight and sharing the recording because I know a lot of people sometimes can't make it, and this is a good intro for folks as when the challenge gets started. So yeah, that's going to be how things are going to roll this evening. And I can do a quick review of the different, or at least DeepSense and ShiftKey labs, unless Jen, did you want to talk about them? All right, so Jen and I wear two hats. So we all work for DeepSense. So DeepSense is a project based out of Dalhousie University. And our main goal is to take students in computer science and engineering and other backgrounds and work in ocean companies. So we really want to help build the bridge to maybe some people who wouldn't consider working in the ocean sector or the blue economy. And we want to introduce them to that sector through internships, a lot of them around artificial intelligence and machine learning, but that's not the only internships we offer. We work in data analytics, data visualizations. They're fully paid internships, and depending on your availability and the company's needs, they can be 4 months to 6 months to 8 months. They can be your co-op, an internship you do in the summer. It could be a master's project, really depending on your needs and the company needs. We really want to help build those bridges, and we support you along the way. We don't just throw you into the company, but we want to make sure we're supporting you we have our team of experts, but also we do fun things like these data challenges. We have discovery sessions. We have our next one coming up March 1st. And that's an online webinar because we want to make sure we're as accessible as possible. So we're open to all of Atlantic Canada. So everyone is welcome to join. And we also have a mentorship program called STEM Connector, where it's a free program to sign up for. You go onto the DeepSense website under mentorship, you can sign up. And on there, we have some great mentors who you can reach out to for flash mentorship. So that's kind of like a one-off talk to them, ask specific questions about maybe their career, how they got where they are, or other specific questions you have. So it's not really a long-term mentorship like some other mentorship programs. So it's really one-offs, people, industry professionals, and people working in STEM with STEM students. So it's open to anyone to join and explore, and definitely reach out to mentors. And we do other events through there as well. We have a mentor panel coming up on February 28th. So the week after Dalhousie's Reading Week, it's going to be a busy one with lots of online events. And then for the other hat Jen and I wear, we also work for ShiftKey Labs. And ShiftKey is one of the sandboxes in Nova Scotia, also based at Dalhousie and in the computer science faculty. So it is a computer science sandbox where we host lots of events for students and hope to really help students kind of, if they're interested in maybe startups or working in that area and figuring out how to do a startup or have an idea and they want to help make it grow, we are able to support that. We just had a big event 2 weeks ago called the Global Game Jam, which was a fun event. And then we have lots of student hackathons, one-off student or events. We can talk with faculty, and we really want to help support students along the way throughout their careers in university, and so that they're all set for when they graduate. And then I'll pass it off to Kat to talk about Cove. Or Tanya, I didn't see Tanya was here.
Cool. Yeah, so I will give a little introduction into Cove. So Cove is basically an innovation hub for marine technology companies. So with the work that I do, I'm the education and outreach coordinator. So we try to work in the workforce development phase of trying to bring in new talent into that sector. So similar to as Lucia mentioned, in terms of bringing in new talent from all different perspectives, we also facilitate that in terms of having all these different interdisciplinary perspectives and experiences into the marine sector world. So whether it's from business backgrounds or computer science or engineering, marketing, all of these skill sets are needed within the marine sector. So we facilitate things like our internships program, and that's in the summer internship where students, post-secondary students, get opportunities to work in the marine sector, gain some valuable experience, and have some career exploration opportunities. So that's one of the facets that we do it. I also run a lot of education programming for P to 12 age group, really trying to inspire and get students excited about oceans and just getting them to learn about some opportunities within the field. So we do that within P to 12 post-secondary students, but also early career professionals and mid-career professionals as well. So all these different skill sets, trying to recognize the place that all these different backgrounds and experiences have within the ocean sector.
Sorry, I forgot how to unmute myself for a second. But yeah, that's a review of 3 organizations. We come together, and like I said, this is our 5th Ocean of Data challenge that we have had. So we do them every semester. So our next one's hopefully going to be in the spring, and that one tends to be more. For last year at least, we did a video. So we'll see if we'll repeat that. But if you enjoy this one, keep an eye out for our social medias for our next one. And then I can pass it off to you, Jen, if you'd like.
Thanks. But this is your quote.
I mean, it's not my quote. I should have put whose quote it is because I forgot that. But it's a quote I heard at the conference I was last week at a communications panel, which I thought really resonated with this event. And it's maybe stories are just data with a soul. So a lot of times I find people think of data, they think numbers, and they don't realize that words and could also be considered a type of data. And stories, when you string it all together, are just kind of data with a soul. It kind of gives it something, a little something extra than just the numbers, which tend to be very simple. There's not much assumptions or theory behind the numbers. It's just a 1 equals a 1. But if you're using words, an okay can mean so many different things depending how you say the word, basically. But that's why I really enjoyed this quote and thought it was a great way to start this challenge.
I completely agree. Lucia definitely sent this message to us as a team, and we were kind of excited by it. It's a great way to look at data. And everything that we do whenever we do a data challenge is talking about how data can be kind of interpreted and explained to people. And data is simply data, but once you add your flavor to it and your analysis to it, it turns into something of real value and some insight. So if you fast forward a slide, please. As you would have seen when you signed up, the topic today is climate and ocean, and one does not mean the other, and one cannot live without the other. So focus on the ocean in the sense that everything that we, whenever we talk at Deep Sense about, and Cove especially too, when we talk about ocean, we talk about things like aquaculture, tourism, military and defense, navigation and shipping and logistics. There's so much that's associated with the ocean. And when we talk about climate, it often talks about the ocean, and it's increasingly talking about the ocean, how the water temperature rises, how the acidity of the ocean is changing, how especially in Atlantic, our ocean is warming faster than anywhere else in the world. But we're talking about text analytics today, and how is it reflected? And so social media is probably one of the primary places that you can find some text that talks about these things. But when we talk about how people talk about ocean and climate change, you'll see some very polarized views. You're going to see people who definitely don't agree with others, are very cynical, misinterpretations, misinformation. But then you also see people who are sharing very compelling information and stories and things that are of value and importance. So when we talk about this kickoff of the things you can explore from a text analytics standpoint, it's going to be very broad. And this is always up to you to figure out the data that you're interested in. So on the next slide, here's some of the things that you can think about exploring. There we go. Okay, so to think about sentiment, do people like it? Do they not like it? Is it positive? Is it negative? Are they neutral? The false facts and bullying. If somebody shares something, Lucia is a lover of the ocean, and if she shared something on one of her social channels that she uses, do people come back and tell her it's not true? Or are they mean to her? What if she said that I'm trying to think of an example, like remember back in, oh, I'm old. There used to be this fake ad that talked about a house hippo. I don't know if anybody remembers that fake house hippo ad. Well, it's that same kind of concept. Lucia likes to tell us real stories about the ocean, and sometimes I make up fake facts and add them to see if people understand and believe them as well. So are people sharing real information or false information? How do emotions tie to the data, the words that people are using when they talk about ocean and climate change? And are they very passionate? Are they negative? Are they cynical? Are they engaged? And different things that can come out of the words that you might find when you write some kind of communication. And don't mind people in my kitchen. And when you think of, if you write something in Grammarly, we'll give you a little emoji to let you know the message of what you're looking at. Well, there's emotions that come with everything that people write. Next slide. Here are some things. We will give you some data for those who are not interested in digging out your own data, you can dig into. But if you're looking for keywords, these are ones that we love. These are the ones that we use. When Lucia is sharing things on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, these are ones we often go to. And the reason why we care is because they're the ones that people search for or look for when they're part of our ecosystem. So ocean climate, climate change are really important, but sometimes the blue economy or blue tech and ocean tech are important too, because nothing's going to change without having technology to enable it. And so we're always really, really interested in this. And ocean literacy is also really important, especially in the community that is trying to educate and help people understand from a scientific standpoint what this actually means. And so these are all very different words that can look up and find different things. So this is up to you to try to look for the different types of pieces that are either of interest or of importance to you. Next slide. So your challenge is, how is our ocean and climate change reflected in text? You're going to look up all of these challenges and opportunities, and you're going to try to find something that's of interest, something that's novel, something that you think is a really great way to communicate something around this problem. If you go to the next slide, whenever we've done our ocean challenges, we've always had 3 streams, and we've tried to do our best to try to maintain these just to give you different perspectives of how to look at this. So under the water, on the water, above the water, around the water, that same kind of idea. These are questions that you don't have to look at, but they're just there as an example. So under the water, like what happens when people scuba dive? How do they share this information? And there's some time series and location-based analytics in there that you could look at. Like, do people talk about ocean temperature in different times of the year? If you're focused on areas in the world that have tourism as a primary source of revenue and income for families and houses and communities, maybe they talk about something around the ocean temperature and clarity and sustainability more so than you'd find somewhere else. So it's kind of, how can you look at this data differently and find some insight that people might find really interesting and of value? On the water, definitely different aspects related to climate concerns. Temperature change would be very interesting to look at how people talk about what this means, and different perspectives based on language. So we did a workshop the other day around natural language processing using Twitter data. And so we'll share the Python notebook, because in there, it's definitely data. It shows you how to download Twitter data for using an API, which Elon Musk literally shut down the day that we did the workshop. So we've got some data for you, or you could try other things, or you can sign up to have your own API and download some data. But the pieces here are, you can pull data from anywhere, but you can go and try to look at geographical and language variances, because the way people talk about things are going to vary around the world and in the language they use. And in some places they have different words for different things. And so maybe there's some very interesting ways that people talk about climate and water and ocean. And above the water, lots of different pieces like around coastal erosion and hashtags that people talk about. When people are looking at satellite images, and do they use different languages and words when they're communicating about that? These are all different things that you could go and start looking at for your own project. So with that, we have some speakers for you to hear from. Inda is the Blue Features Pathway Program Outreach Coordinator. I'm sorry. For Students on Ice. And Students on Ice, if you don't do it now because we want you to pay attention, but later on, I think you should Google Students on Ice, because they are doing some incredible work. And also they have an incredible team of people that work there. We've been very fortunate to meet a bunch of them. So I'm going to hand it on over to Inda, and hopefully we've enabled your screen sharing, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so
Looks
much,
great.
Jen. Everything was good?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for sharing your space and time with me here today. As Jen mentioned, I am currently the Outreach and Communications Coordinator for SOI Foundation's Blue Futures Pathways program, which connects young people to the resources that they need to pursue careers in the sustainable blue economy. But I also come to you as a storytelling fellow with Community Foundations of Canada. I look at how storytelling can be used as a tool to help advance change at the systems level. I am a journalism school graduate, a former reporter for business and economic issues in the Maritimes, and I'm also a former market intelligence analyst, where in that role, I curated and presented information to executives in large corporations in North America. So as you can probably tell, I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. As a kid, I wrote stories to help me process milestones, moments. And as time goes on, storytelling has not only become a personal passion for me, but it's also a professional skill that I've been honing throughout my career. So today, what I want to share with you is how you can use storytelling in this Ocean Data Challenge. So you might think, we're talking about ocean data. What does storytelling have anything to do with it? But you might have read stories in magazines or papers or watched documentaries where they show how journalists find evidence in a stack of scientific reports or financial data. And you'll notice that they don't ask us, the viewers or the readers, to plow through the data ourselves. Instead, what they do is they highlight the key information, they contextualize it, and then they weave it into a narrative or visual presentation that's engaging. Storytelling makes meaning out of data. It goes beyond analysis and provides a clear, compelling narrative around that data. Harvard Business School describes this type of communication skill as data storytelling. Effective storytelling can also help audiences understand the key messages as opposed to being overwhelmed by the information. It can help inform people's decisions, and perhaps what we hope is to move them to take necessary actions. So I'd like to share some key questions and considerations for storytelling that have helped me in my own experience and things that I've learned in journalism school and throughout my career. So the first thing is, once you've gathered the data, what jumps out at you? What is the story that the data tells you? Are there key messages or specific information that is interesting? And why is it interesting? Consider the context and ask yourself, so what? I have this data, and so what? If I put myself in the shoes of the audience, why would I care? For example, a daily weather data for a decade might have a lot of really good information in it scientifically, but what might appeal to the general public could be the fact that it indicates that more extreme weather is happening due to climate change. And in the case of this challenge, this ocean data challenge that you're having, your overarching context is, how is our ocean and climate change reflected in the text data that you're looking at? One thing that's really, really important in communications and storytelling is to know your audience. You can present the same information differently to different audiences. For example, for the Blue Futures Pathways program, the data that we have shows that young people and their parents don't have a very favorable view of ocean-based livelihoods because they're often linked to instability, seasonability, and limited to careers in fishing, the Navy, etc. So we set out to expand this understanding by highlighting diverse young people working in the sustainable blue economy careers. And this is just to showcase the opportunities that are there and what kind of careers are out there. This is particularly targeted to the youth. And then we also expand to telling stories about employers and organizations that are doing things like analyzing and cleaning up microplastics in the ports of Toronto, for example. And that's one way that we kind of like make sure that if our audience is the youth, this is what we do. And we do that, for example, by making 1-minute Instagram reel videos and then putting them on Instagram because that's where our audience is at. So you might have multiple findings in a data set, but you would need to narrow it down to the most relevant ones for your audience. And knowing your audience would also help you answer the questions that I'll touch on a little bit later. So back in journalism school, I learned about the inverted pyramid model for writing news articles. I think storytelling is a creative craft, and I think you should always strive to use your creativity. And so there are many, many ways to present information while still sticking to the facts. But I really find this inverted pyramid still relevant for our context specifically. And so this is just a simplified version of it. So you can see at the top or the opening, your headline or video title and your hook or your opening sentence or paragraph should really encourage curiosity in people. It should capture the audience's attention. And all the key information should be at the top, followed by supporting context. Any additional information that are kind of like nice to knows can be at the bottom. This applies to, if you're making like scripts for video or podcasts as well. And then there's also the concept of show, don't tell, which is very useful. So, for example, it's basically whether you're writing or you're using other formats of storytelling, showing and not telling is essentially immersing your audience in the story. So, for example, you can see this kind of like fuller paragraph in a story by the Narwhal about deep sea mining. This is a story by journalist Francesca Fionda, where she explains kind of, it's more like in a world obscured from humanity lies a dark, lush ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you're just telling people like the ocean is dark and mysterious, like, okay, so you're not really pulling people into the world that you want them to experience. Now that you know what the data tells you, who your audience is, how to attract them, I'd like to also encourage you to consider the medium that you'll use. What is the most effective way to communicate your findings? Is it a short video, like I was mentioning? Is it on a reel on Instagram? Is it an audio documentary? Is it a podcast? Could it be a spoken word poem? Or maybe it's a proper report or a written feature in a magazine, or maybe it's a talk, like a TED Talk style stuff. And then consider also where your audience would be. Where can you reach them with this information? Could it be that, if it's social media, would it be that most of your audience are primarily on LinkedIn, or is it on Facebook? And consider also the limitations of each platform and how that could limit the way that your story is being told as well. And I just want to show you these examples of visual storytelling by one of my favorite data journalists. Her name's Mona Shalabi, and she's based in the US. You can visit her Instagram at Mona Shalabi. The first one is based on data from scientific studies about wave speeds and reading speeds. And it's just really cool how she can visualize this data. And the second one is based on data from NASA about how global sea levels have risen by 8.5 centimeters since 1993. And that's about the length of your middle finger, which makes it easier for us to wrap our heads around these topics. So beyond that, there are more things to consider as well. Some best practices that I personally use is to always try to use clear and concise language. Consider accessibility, depends on your audience. Again, closed captioning is always encouraged. Font sizes, photo descriptions, translations, etc. Consider attention spans of people. Nowadays, if people are going to pay attention to a 30-second video, can you amplify your message through a 30-second video and maybe bring people to the fuller report or something like that? So consider the length of your story. Clarifying the context that makes the data relevant. So for example, data about rising sea levels as it relates to climate change and other things. And then don't forget to credit sources and also ensure accuracy. And that's it for me. Thank you all for your time. Please feel free to connect via email or LinkedIn. I also curate and craft some of the stories that I mentioned about people and organizations who are contributing to the sustainable blue economy in Canada. You can see them on bluefuturespathways.org or Students on ICE's social media, just at Students on ICE. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Inda. That was awesome.
Thanks, Lucia.
Agreed. So one of the things to remember, please, is we have comments there's a Q&A, but also there's a chat. So if you want to chat, feel free to chat. There's also been some comments from some other participants who are looking for other people maybe to partner with. So be sure to add some comments, but that show don't tell thing, I'm going to use that. We're going to steal that. That's amazing. I really like that. Thank you for that. And Deanna, we're going to pass it on over. So Deanna, and we discussed this, I will not say your last name with any level of flair of the C's I will mess up. But Deanna, when she did her PhD at Dalhousie in text analytics, then moved into working with industry, with companies. They often talk about moving from academia to industry, and now works for Shopify. So it's fascinating to see, or not Shopify, where to get that Dash Hudson? I don't know, because when you said Ottawa, there's the first thing I thought of. I know you're Dash Hudson. So we're going to hand it on over, and she's going to talk a little about text.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Just a second to share my screen. Just let me know if you actually see it and try to.
Yeah, we see the PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. Do you see the right
No,
version
we
of
see it. No, we see the the one that you use. The
All right.
actual app part.
Okay, I should
It
have.
still works.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's no, like, I guess I'll just talk not to take too much time. So basically, I'm going to talk in general about the natural language processing methods and about natural language processing. So it will be a little bit more on the technical side. I'm Diana Kosmaets, and I work as a research scientist, as Jennifer said, at Dash Hudson. We do a lot of text analytics, mostly computer vision nowadays, but like social media comes in the package with a lot of textual data and images. So computer vision / text analytics in combination. If you want to connect with me, you can. There's a link to my LinkedIn profile. So I'll just give a general idea of what is natural language processing. You probably heard about it through social media in general. It's lately it's been a popular area of artificial intelligence to get a good big boost in research, and also you might come across with other ways of calling this type of branch of science, like computational linguistics, natural language engineering, or human language technology. And it's what is actually about is about giving computers and machines the ability to understand text, and textual information and spoken information in the same way as humans can. And that's a very hard task. And it started being a thing from early 50s, and nowadays there's especially in the last 20 years, there's a lot of advancements being done, especially with deep learning advancements, and a lot of basically money poured into this kind of research. It's basically based off theories like linguistics, psycholinguistics, cognitive science, and statistics. But it's built also on top of computer science algorithms and knowledge that surrounds the other types of data. So NLP applications are vast, and the way how we approach problems and solve certain text-based problems are, there's so many different ways to work with data. Some of the earliest ones was language translation. That one is probably one of the oldest problems that linguists and computer scientists tried to tackle. Nowadays, we are all familiar with smart assistants, social media monitoring, chatbots. Sentiment analysis is something probably that you're going to work with in this Ocean Challenge, and it's tied to working with the social media texts. So
Just one sec, Deanna, your slides haven't moved for us. Have you moved them?
yes, I did. Okay.
I wonder if your screen has gone and split into a two. Know what I
Okay,
mean?
let me, does it work now? Just a second.
Yes.
Perfect.
Now we see the slides.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah, I had extended screen. I should have known that. Yeah, all right. Sorry about that. So
Oh, good.
we are on NLP applications, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, with emergence of social media in the last 2 decades, textual information is vast and enormous, and it's basically the very large repository of human knowledge, and it continues to grow quickly every second, every minute. And unfortunately, the amount of data is available is not proportional to how much of that data is actually used and exploited in useful ways. So NLP is basically a tool that helps us to get the value from this kind of unstructured text. And oops. And there are different domains that really take advantage of natural language processing, such as businesses, healthcare, finance, recruitment, governments, and retails. And they are all kinds of different things that they find value from using NLP tools to get more value from the data they're using. So for example, businesses do a lot of sentiment analysis, email filters, voice recognition, information extraction, healthcare, and there's a lot of research going on in healthcare where there's a lot of predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, finance, where they are big on the document search engine, fraud detection, banking, recruitment, information instruction, social media analytics, and fraud detection, government, e-governance, public feedback analysis, prediction to help decision making, and retail and general marketing is really, really big in using NLP tools to understand users, to improve their services, customer support, recommendation systems. So all the big companies such as Amazon, Google, they're basically, their business models are built around using these different NLP systems, basically entire systems to bring value to users and basically earn money. So NLP at Dash Hudson, we are primarily a company that does computer vision. So what we are providing is social media analytics and social listening for businesses, for brands, and the value that they get from Dash Hudson is basically being able to understand their audience and being able to address certain specific problems on time. So some of the things that are specifically text-based are, for example, product tagging, which is a combination of computer vision and NLP. We do a lot of sentiment analysis where it's really important for companies to know how their users or clients feel about the products they are selling or they're trying to sell, or how they feel in general about certain. Nowadays, it's very important what are the stances of companies around certain topics. So that's something that companies really pay attention to and try to be on top of everything. We also do visual search based on text. So basically based on text, we are looking for basically search for similar images, and other way around, based on the image inputs, searching for similar captions and text. Another thing that might be most similar to what you might be doing in this Ocean challenge is keyword anomaly detection in social media. So basically in this this feature, we are looking for certain anomalous behavior. So similar to trending hashtags, but sometimes trending hashtags don't really give us information what is actually popular on the platform, and doesn't always catch the right popular topic. So keyword anomaly detection is something that our clients find very useful. So this is now jumped right away into like just a quick scratch on how a typical NLP pipeline would look like, but this depends greatly on what you're actually doing, whether it's going to be unsupervised text analytics or it's going to be something supervised. So pre-processing encapsulates a lot of different things. That could be splitting your text into words, some sort of transformation of your text into something that your computer understands. Feature extraction is another layer that you would apply, which is basically you have a set of tokens or output of pre-processing phase, and you want to select the ones that are really important to you, or basically clean out something that might not be as useful information in your for your model. And the last stage is model building. So this could be, depending again what kind of task, NLP task you're working, it could be unsupervised, based on certain parameters that you over time tune based on like how your text behaves, or supervised where you would have some sort of pre-labeled text to train your model, and so model actually knows what's looking for, and gives a label to your text. And there are like, so NLP pipelines can be very long, and there could be many different things in a row. Sometimes in pre-processing phase, we have a lot of things that are kind of already mini models that do pre-processing for you. Some of the NLP tasks are considered that they are just pre-processing phase, such as tokenization, splitting into smaller chunks, and lemmatization, which is basically bringing words in their infinitive form, or other things that might be useful for basically your end model. So I would like to also share some useful NLP tools that you might find interesting to work with, and you might be even aware of some of these. So such as Hugging Face transformers, since you're already working like practically with certain data, this is like by far most popular, I'd say, library and repository of deep learning models, language models that you can use. And it's kind of community based. So everyone, like researchers contribute to it, big companies contribute to it. So you can really take advantage of some pre-built models that might actually work for your data. Spacie is another one that is industry, they advertise themselves as industry grade Python library for NLP, and it kind of works. There are integrations between Hugging Face and Spacie, and you can take advantage of that if you find Spacie pipelines work better for your data, and if you just happen to know to use Spacie. There's another, this last two are more like research community backed libraries such as Stanford NLP. It's been there for a while already, but it's very powerful, and it's particularly good for some standard NLP problems. NLTK is more statistical based. It's kind of old school. It might work for very simple tasks, but it's limited, and some people would say it's a little bit outdated, but that's just personal opinion. I would definitely recommend going through Hugging Face Transformers, especially their documentation, because there's a lot of, although it's like documentation on the code and on the library, there's a lot of their documentation talks a lot about actual problems that they're solving, and they have a lot of links to like research and papers and results, and also they are hosting their models, so you can basically try it as you go there and try different kinds of models, and without you needing actually to install something before you figure out if it's working for you or not. So you can just copy paste in a text box and give it a try. So this is what I planned for today for NLP. I didn't want to catch myself to go too deep into NLP like pipelines and stuff, so I don't confuse everyone, but hope this is good enough. If there's anything I can share more like on the resources, I'm more than happy to. And yeah, so there's tons of tools, especially nowadays with deep learning being at rage. There's definitely things that can make your work much easier, so you don't have to do things manually.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Do you want me to do the intro?
Sure, just a sec. I think one thing about that, just so for those of you, like I saw some notes of people who weren't comfortable with text analytics. What Deanna just talked about, that is, you don't have to do that. Like, so she's explaining something of different tools and techniques and great suggestions of places to go where you're going to find lots of really good online resources. But I also think for those people who feel very overwhelmed by coding, or it may not be their forte, that's okay. We'll come to that question in just 1 second. That's a great question. We'll come back to that. But sorry, Lucy, I'll pass it on over for your intro.
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to intro Maranke Harris, who is an oceanography PhD student at the University of Victoria, who has returned to academia after working in the industry on climate engineering and intergovernmental multi-vessel research expedition planning. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Her research focuses on the most unexplored areas of the ocean, containing the most potential for discovery, specializing in hydrothermal vent ecosystems, 1,000 to 4,000 meters under the ocean's surface. She is fascinated with deep sea exploration, blue economy, microbiology, and seafloor mapping, and her current PhD research intersects vent microbial genetic resource potential and deep sea mining developments. Plus, on top of all of that, she also is the founder of The Imaginative Scientist, which is a science communication brand blending traditional outreach and artistry to produce an audience first approach that engages, invites, and inspires curiosity. And so with over 30 national and international speaking engagements under her belt, Maranke is well-versed in enthusiastic and knowledgeable outreach. So I'm excited that she's here with us today. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah.
That's really, really well read and nice. So Lucia already did a great job of introducing me, but I'm just gonna have this brief slide. So Maranke Harris, PhD student in the Juniper Lab at the University of Victoria. And here at UVic, I dedicate my life to deep sea oceanography, so life in the absence of light in the lower layers of the ocean. And it's kind of akin to space exploration, so, or at least the closest we can get while still remaining on our home planet. And then, of course, beyond academic pursuits, I'm the founder of The Imaginative Scientist, which is a science communication brand that blends traditional outreach and artistry to produce an audience-first approach that engages, invites, and inspires curiosity. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is science communication. So we live in a world where we're inundated by messaging, and much of this messaging comes from sources sharing information on ocean and climate. And there are several common issues with how science is communicated online, and these include miscommunication or oversimplification of scientific concepts and results, and that leads to misunderstandings and misinterpretations of the research. There's also bias and misinformation, which is driven by political, economic, or social interest. And there's inadequate representation and underrepresentation of certain groups, including women and minorities, in the science community and the science communication community. And then there's over-reliance on sensationalism and headlines that prioritize attention grabbing over actual accuracy and meaningful understanding of the science. And then there's lack of accessibility and difficulty in understanding complex scientific concepts for the general public, especially those without a scientific background. And finally, there's limited engagement between the scientific community and the public, and that leads to a disconnect between scientific discovery and public perception. So addressing these issues is important for improving the accuracy, transparency, and public understanding of science, and for also promoting trust in scientific knowledge and institutions. And today I'll be focusing on those last three, so points 4 to 5. And these can be summarized this way. So often ocean and climate science portrayal is either overly academic and exclusive, or it's sensationalized and inaccurate, which leads to things like crisis pandering. So each of these messaging structures create echo chambers, and those echo chambers hinder the advancement of science and society. So grounded and effective science communication can have an impact on politics, healthcare, policy agendas as well. And this all contributes to benefiting both society as a whole and the environment that surrounds us. So ineffective science communication leads to ineffective text and language surrounding those important issues on ocean and climate. So I want you to think of science communication kind of like a telescope, like the Hubble telescope. And it's this way because of the first point, which leads us to magnification of ideas. So a telescope magnifies distant objects, making them more visible and easier to understand. And effective science communication can take complex scientific ideas and make them clearer, more accessible, and easier to understand for a general audience. And this brings clarity to the unknown. And it can also be used as a tool for connection. So a telescope can be used to observe astronomical events with others, fostering a sense of community and shared experience. And effective science communication can bring people together, fostering a sense of community as well, and also that shared understanding and encouraging discussion and collaboration. And then finally, they both enable exploration. So a telescope enables us to explore the vast universe and uncover new discoveries. And in the same way, effective science communication can inspire people to explore and understand the world around them and discover new ways of thinking about science and its role within society. So overall, a telescope and effective science communication both serve as tools for discovery, understanding, and connection, and enable us to see and comprehend things that might otherwise be beyond our reach. And using science communication effectively produces a clear image, kind of like this one that was produced by the Hubble Space Telescope. There are many ways to communicate science, whether at a professional or a recreational level. And the first step in formulating a unique approach to science communication is to understand the target audience. So this includes factors like age, education level, cultural background, and their prior knowledge and interests related to the topic that's going to be communicated. And this information will help communicators to tailor their communication approach to best reach and engage their audiences. And then the second step is to determine the message that you want to communicate. So this should be a clear and concise statement that summarizes key takeaways from the research or the scientific topic. And you need to make sure that the message is understandable to the target audience and aligns with their interests and prior knowledge. The third step is to choose the right medium for communicating your message. So different audiences may respond better to different types of media, such as visual aids or hands-on demonstrations, also written articles, and also public speaking. So considering the strengths and the weaknesses of each medium, and then choosing the one that best supports the message that you're trying to convey and best supports the audience that you're addressing is the strong point here. And then finally, our final step is to incorporate creativity into the communication approach. So this can be through using unique visual aids and incorporating storytelling techniques, also using humor like you see on TikTok a lot of the time, or taking a novel approach to presenting the information. So the goal here is to make the communication memorable, engaging, and enjoyable for the audience while still effectively communicating the key message. So by combining creativity with a clear understanding of the audience and the message, you can develop a unique and effective approach to science communication. And this fourth step, creativity, is also my personal favorite. And this is because, as I mentioned earlier, my creative approach incorporates visual artistry. So in addition to my traditional science outreach work that I do, that's largely based in deep sea research and exploration, I also aim to promote science communication through visual art by blending science and artistry to create impactful, engaging pieces that make science accessible for and fascinating to all. And us scientists love complexity, but this can really impede efficient communication, as I mentioned earlier in this presentation. And this is critical because that effective science communication has the power to impact politics, healthcare, and policy agendas. So if you can get general audiences to truly understand the science behind why something like global warming is damaging, instead of just covering it with a blanket statement of dangerous, then they're more likely to act with the power that the general public holds, which is political voting power. And much of this comes down to simplifying our ideas strategically, so our scientific ideas. So there's a fine balance between being detailed and being accessible, and it's really important to strike that right balance. So with my art, what I'm essentially aiming to do is change the way in which scientific concepts are regularly communicated. So making it more palatable to those who aren't in science, and also to other scientists who may not be in a specific field that I'm discussing. Because we know that there's also disconnect between scientific fields, not just outside of science entirely. And I find that art is an incredibly efficient form of communication. So you can say something with an illustration that may be almost impossible to say with just words, or would at least take you much longer. And also beyond the sheer efficiency of communication, images can also engage the audience in a way that's much more difficult to accomplish with simple text alone. So it's also important to use both of these sparingly and strategically. So I personally believe that images should complement text, but shouldn't completely take the place of text when the message can be strengthened with words, and written word combined with art can do the best job for conveying that scientific concept. So here's some examples of just how I blend these two passions. So on the left is a piece that accompanies an explanation of how mushrooms decompose our bodies post-mortem or after death through the process of microremediation. And then on the right is a piece that accompanies an explanation of how human evolution was intricately linked with and aided by the existence of the woolly mammoth. And if anybody's interested in reading those explanations, they're all found on my Instagram at ImaginativeSci. And here in these two pieces, the many ways in which art and science complement one another are being used to promote efficient scientific communication. So the image is what draws the audience in and makes the science inviting. And then the written caption provides full explanation for some deeper learning. So thank you for listening. All of my interests, so research, science outreach, and visual art, intersect on my professional website, which is just my name, mirankeharris.com. And I'm on almost all social media platforms at ImaginativeSci. And with that, I'll wrap up. You've heard a bunch from me.
Great. Thanks so much, Miranke. I always love hearing about your work. It's always very impressive. But now we can do, if anyone has any questions for our three panelists, now is the time to ask if you have any questions about what they've talked about, or if you have any or anything along those lines. Now you can either drop them in the chat box or in the Q&A box, whichever works for you. I saw that we had some maybe a bit earlier. But one question I had that I think might be more of an Inda and Maranki question. As people kind of in the ocean world right now, and we're asking folks to kind of explore topics. What are some like hot ocean topics that you maybe are seeing on like social media or that are coming up that might be an interesting thing to dive into that might there might be a lot of data for? Do you have anything comes to mind?
I'll
Yeah,
go
go for it.
Well, deep sea mining has been a really hot topic right now, and my current PhD thesis actually focuses on that as well. So it's always on my mind. But Canada just 3 days ago, I think, announced a deep sea mining moratorium, which means that there will be no deep sea mining allowed within Canadian waters, so within our economic exclusion zone, and that extends to about 200 nautical miles off the coast. So there's a lot of discussion happening around that currently.
Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely a lot in the deep sea world. Inda, do you have any topics that stand out that might be interesting for folks to dive into?
And I mentioned deep sea mining too. But I think it's really interesting to think about the context around that, why people are trying to mine deep sea underwater. As we electrify, we'll need more minerals for batteries. So, you know, thinking about the environment in a way of like, we're thinking of using electric cars so that we're, you know, more eco-friendly, but at the same time, the batteries that go into those cars also are minerals from places that might not be as great to take from. So
awesome, thank you. And I would just add as well, this past week or last week, we were at the Marine Protected Areas Conference called Impact 5, and there was a lot of discussion there about marine protected areas as a whole. So that's another great place to dive into. BC announced some MPAs, marine protected areas. So there's a lot of chat about that online right now as well. So yes, there was, oh yeah, go for it.
To that, Lucia, something that came up from Impact 5 was the Indigenous-led marine protection. That's a really interesting, I think it's just a movement across the world as well.
Yeah, definitely. The BC MPA is with 11 of the 15 nations, I believe, First Nations along the BC coast, which is amazing. Any other questions?
There was a couple, Deanna, there's one that says, are there any pre-built models you would suggest?
So yeah, I wasn't sure if I should reply in here or not. So basically, depends on what you want to do with the text. Like there are tons of models, but depends what you want to do. You just need to define what is your end goal, and you can definitely, if you have something in mind, what you would like to do with data, I would gladly suggest where to start. So it's not like one general model that does everything. So it has to be based off the task you want to do.
And I think some of the things, you know, that we've been through there, and like I mentioned earlier, we did a natural language processing webinar last week that we can post a link to. And it was using Twitter data. It doesn't matter what data you're using, whatever your corpus corpi, whatever the terminology, or whatever kind of a structure or whatever data you have. Let's go back to what all of our speakers also talked about. It's how you're explaining it and showing it. Sometimes it's word clouds. Sometimes it's showing pairings of relationships. Sometimes it's showing sizes and volumes of words with different colors that are associated with themes and sentiment. There's ways to visualize your data too. So to Deanna's point about it all depends on what you want to do with it. I think sometimes it might be a Google search and finding some other pieces that people are interested in. And thank you. There's a post with a link with a copy to our recording. Is there any other, I do see a question that's asking about accessing data for the challenge. So we do have a link that we'll send out to you and we'll make available, or we have a link that we can share with you, but we have lots of different versions of data that we've used in so many different sessions, but we also have, like we mentioned, some Twitter data. There's a Python notebook in there for those who want to code and want to look at creating something like a word cloud and removing stop words, for example, from some larger pieces of text. I think that the big thing goes back to, you don't have to use whatever we are giving you. You can go find data. You can download a report. So in there, you'll also see there's some reports from like the UN or something, and different groups have written reports on elements related to ocean and climate change. You could go and analyze the reports and look for common words. There's ways to take a PDF and convert it and then pull out some key themes and look for frequencies of words. You could look up things around publicly traded companies. How often do they mention climate in some of their annual filings? Like, there's so many different things that you could go and tackle when you're looking at the different types of data that is available out there. And maybe other people who haven't touched on doing analysis of it at all.
Yeah, I had another question I can throw out there. I think it's for everyone, relevant, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered, like working in your field? I always find that a really fun question to learn about more about folks and what they do.
So I can go first, maybe. So well, not me personally, but we are dealing a lot with like not data science people. So that like bridging the gap of wants and what actually can be done can be hard. And it's sometimes hard to communicate, sometimes it's hard to communicate what actually can be done, because like product research team, oh, they have this particular thing, why we can't do that? But, you know, depending on what kind of limitations we have, what kind of data we have. So that's, I find challenge between communication between different domains. And that's something that always can be worked on.
Definitely, I feel that as someone who works both with the business side and with the student side and computer science side, and trying to build those bridges and get them to understand. Maranka or Inda, do you guys have any challenges you wanted to touch upon?
I can speak to just deep sea science in general. The biggest challenge that I've encountered is breaking into the field, because ocean science can be pretty niche, and then deep sea science takes robots, submersibles, and it's very expensive, so it's even more niche. But I find that, like, just with the contacts that I've made, little by little, it opens up even more. And I've always come across people who have been way further along in their careers than me, who have been more than happy to help me with my stage or my projects wherever I was at my stage of my career. So I guess what this is leading to is, don't be afraid to access your resources. If you have access to people who are where you want to be, talking to them, and even along with this project, like talking to people who have more experience with what you're trying to execute in this challenge, could help you execute what you want as well.
No, that's very true. It's a good one. And I like what you wrote in the chat, that someone should tackle maybe the blue economy and where that's going in Canada. I feel that's a little selfish.
I'd read it. I'm a little biased, but I'd read it.
Do you have any challenges that you faced?
Well, I'm really happy to see that there's more value put into skills like storytelling, communications now. There's a lot of efforts bridging those, but I think in the beginning I was really feeling a lot of imposter syndrome. Even though I have a lot of experience in that field, it's entering this new subject, I guess, this whole new topic that I'm still learning about. So yeah, I think that in the spaces where I feel like there might be a lot of scientists, but there's actually more like a lot of communicators out there too, that like Moronke, who's bridging both and using art as well. So I love seeing that.
Yeah, one of the things from the Impact 5 conference was one of the panels I went to. There was a speaker from The Guardian who runs like the ocean sector, and it was just funny because he's not a scientist. He doesn't have a science background. Before that, he was running like the small like city articles for The Guardian, but now he's like really dove into oceans and was able to like interview Sylvia Earle, which I think was pretty cool. So it just goes to show that you don't have to be an ocean scientist to talk about the ocean or about the blue economy or anything in this field. So I think it's a great way to this challenge is a great kind of entry point, kind of exploring what's out there, all the data that's available, and seeing how people communicate, and then be able to kind of present back to the audience at the end, because there's a little presentation at the end where you and your team are able to present your findings and your however you'd like back to us. So it kind of wraps it all together nicely. Is there any final questions before we can let our speakers go? Anything else? Well, I don't see any typing. So, but thanks for coming in so much. You guys are welcome to stay if you'd like as we kind of wrap this up. We just have a couple slides to review and talk data, but I appreciate you taking the time and the energy to be with us this evening or afternoon, depending where you are. But we really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you again. It was really fun learning from you. So thanks.
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to go. I'm going to reshare my screen. And we're just going to wrap up. We just have some final slides, like I said. And I always forget, just press this button. Okay. You'd think after 3 years, Zoom would be super easy, but no. All right. Yes. So just wanted to do this kind of the same slide that we saw earlier that Jen covered, but just talking about hopefully now you have maybe a better understanding of what you want to tackle, which stream you want to go into, and figure out the challenge of how is our ocean and climate change reflected in text. And like we said, it can be text in a variety of different formats. It could be PDFs, articles, social media. Hopefully we'll provide you with some data if you don't want to, but the main rule of this challenge is to use data. That is the number one rule of the Ocean of Data Challenge, is you have to use some sort of data in your final results. It doesn't have to be an in-depth analysis, but just kind of touching upon data in some way. Data, Jen, did you want to talk some more about data? Or do you think we have it covered?
I'll talk just especially because there's one other question. Okay, for this challenge, are we required to propose a solution or just present findings from the data? So as we talk about here, it's a solution is in air quotes, right? It's all about how you're analyzing and what you're analyzing. So if you took 5 different reports and summarized them and brought them all together, your solution might be a presentation of similar words that are replicated across 5 different documents. Maybe you've taken tweets from one group and you want to do a word cloud. Like all of this is going to be, your solution is very varied, and it's going to depend on what kind of data you've gone and pulled and extracted or found. The big piece that Lutz is always really clear whenever we submit these documents or give you your forms is you have to have some form of data. And so what we're not saying that you have to like go and do massive analysis. We saw some really incredible visualizations and drawings of Moronke that like you could do a visualization and drawing of some kind of data that you found or a piece of text that you've analyzed and done a drawing of it. There's a lot of different varied prizes that we have, which we'll get into. So you can present findings of your data, you can propose a solution because you did some analysis and found something. It's entirely up to you in terms of how you tackle this. And in terms of going very specific versus general, that's up to you. So maybe you want to drill down into analytics of people in Nova Scotia and how they talk about something specific, or on the coast in Thailand and who covers off something. On the flip side, maybe you want to talk about global figures or global concepts. So it's entirely up to you of how very general or very broad that you want to go. We have very clear rules. So your solution, your prototype, a technical solution, maybe you make an app that shows how people can analyze and look at data or enter it. Obviously, this is entirely up to you and how much time you want to put towards this over the 2 weeks. You can do a prototype of something, you can visualize something, you can do something that we had a bunch of questions thrown in there. You just go and tackle one of them. You have to have data. If you're going to go and use some of the data, obviously, we're going to ask that you're making sure you're using something that was either publicly available or you have the rights to be using that. We would expect that you're not going and taking some private information, analyzing it, and then sharing it publicly. That would be not good. Looking for teams. There was a message in the chat of someone who was looking for a fellow team member. You can do this solo, or you can be in a team up to 5. Going back to the PC, we expect you will have information and publicly available. It cannot be confidential information you're analyzing. So if you worked for a company that was in the ocean sector, had a friend who did, and then analyzed their data and shared it, that's the example of not public information. You must be living in Canada and have a Canadian bank account, because if you were to win, that's how you would get some prize money. Obviously, when rules are created, it's because something's happened and made us realize this needs to be a rule. So it is now a rule. And also, you must be a part-time or full-time student or have graduated in the past 12 months from one of the academic institutions in Atlantic Canada, and we will check. So that means everyone on the team. If you're a team of up to 5, it's not that one of you has to, it's that everyone has to.
Oh, too far. Oh, no. Okay. All right.
And final presentations on the 27th. So this is where it gets tricky. There's some notes and bullets here that you'll end up getting some summary pieces about, but this is really important that you need to fill out a registration form by Wednesday. And if you don't, it just means it's because we plan the evening of when the presentations happen on the 27th. So we need to know that you are going to be presenting something. It's only a 3-minute slideshow. We'll cut you off. So work towards 3 minutes of doing your best to present a compelling information. Our judges will ask you some questions, and then we'll evaluate you against the others and talk about the next slide, which is going to be your prizes. Our prizes.
And I'll be sending an email. I was just gonna say, I was gonna send an
Yeah.
email with all the links again. So if you don't catch any of the links, you'll get an email tomorrow with all the links listed.
And there's links for data and links for registration forms. So don't be
Mhm.
overwhelmed, you'll get it. The prizes. We've varied the prizes based on people who've participated and what's come forward. So right now we've got it listed as a first to second to top creative and judge's choice. There might be something that maybe there's top technical, maybe there's something that's creative, and maybe something's visual. Like, it all depends on what we get from the different types of ideas you bring forward. But ideally, these are the goals that we go after, is first and second and creative. And the creative is the reminder that not everything needs to be technical, not everything needs to be programming and lines of code. That's your schedule. So right now, it's the 13th. You have to register with the form that you see and as the link by the 15th at just before midnight. And then you will join us on the 27th, but you'll have submitted your presentation at 3 p.m. on the 27th. And then we kick off at 6 p.m. on the 27th.
Yeah, that's it. So any final questions from anyone? We can stop. How can we make the teams? How do we contact people that are in this meeting?
Well,
that's a good question. We've usually in the past, people have kind of worked with their own contacts and people that they know. But if you're interested in building a team, I'd suggest, if you're not already on a team, dropping your email in the chat and then maybe connecting that way. That could be a good way to do it. Or I'm trying to think of another potential way.
We're trying to not facilitate introducing people after the fact, because we want you to take the initiative now to message and say, I'm interested. And so if you're interested in working with Sophia or someone else who, or Haley, who's put a note out there, you can message each other. I see an email address. This is your chance right now to copy it, because when the Zoom meeting's over, it's going to go away as an email address for you to access.
And I saw Brigida earlier also asked about making a team and shared her email. So maybe she can share that again.
Oh, you know what I'm loving? There was a NSCC email address. There's an Acadia. There's a MUN.
And
Oh,
here,
this is
I will
lovely.
share Brigida's from earlier. So I hope that's okay.
Oh,
I don't know.
NASCAD, not NSCC. Yeah. Well done. Tanya, hi. Are you clapping, or are you saying I want to put my hand up to talk?
No, I was just gonna say that if anybody's looking for an internship out there, yeah, we still are looking for really awesome interns. So I'm gonna drop my actually, you know what? I'm gonna drop Kat's because
Give her more work.
I'm gonna drop Kat's email in there because really that's where it will go in the end. But everybody out there online, if you're looking for an internship, we are still taking a few CVs. There are very niche, limited positions still available that we are hiring for, but worth sending your CV along, because you might actually get an email from Kat.
Is there like a,
Um,
can you say the general area for folks maybe that you're looking for?
Kat, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so yeah, I do see some friendly names. So that's awesome. I see a lot of you that have already applied, which is awesome. So we are looking for both in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. So there's placements in both provinces. In Newfoundland, there's a lot of roles, particularly within computer science, some in business and marketing as well, and some even in kind of general engineering, civil engineering as well. That's kind of your niche discipline, there's opportunities within that. And then within Nova Scotia, it's also pretty wide and varied. So there's opportunities within business and marketing, within engineering, whether it's mechanical or computer engineering or electrical. There's a few different opportunities in that space. Yeah, so those are kind of the big ones that we're looking to fill. So if you have any interest in any skill sets in those areas, and even if not, feel free to send an email, and there's still a lot of other opportunities that I can send your way.
Awesome. And we have emails in the chat. So Sophia, Haley, Brigida, Jessica, Rabia, and Giri are all looking for teams. So there you go. You guys can share, and Kat's email was shared by Tanya. So it's kat.mataya@coveocean.com. So you'll find it in the chat. And we have
And just
a
one
question.
other reminder, Kat's not matchmaking you for this event.
Yes.
Thank you for that point there, Jen. Yeah, this is for
Yes.
internships specifically. Yeah.
And then we do, I guess we have a question about the internship. Giri is asking, what technology/skills do we need to know to join in that company? So are there any specific skills that you know that you're looking for that companies need?
It is very specific depending on the company. So I would say if you want to just shoot me an email, that would be best, and let me know your space. Because if it's computer science, some companies are looking for people that have, experience with certain languages like Java and C software and different Python, all those different programs. Some might just need you to have Python. So it really does vary depending on the company and depending on what they're looking for. So I would suggest just sending me an email, and then we can have a bit more of a deeper conversation about it.
Yeah, because you guys, how many companies are you providing interns to this year?
Yeah, we have 25 companies this year.
Amazing.
So, yeah, so it's a lot of different needs, which is awesome, and a lot of different skill sets they're looking for.
Oh, this is a great question. Is there an email for any questions we may have during the challenge? Yes, I will drop that in the chat, but it is info@deepsense.ca. Also, it'll be the email that emails you tomorrow. So like I said, tomorrow I'll be sending out an email with this recording for those who missed it, and all the links that you need throughout the challenge. But basically, you can email what I just dropped, info@deepsense.ca. So there you go. That is the contact. But again, you'll get an email from that being me tomorrow. And if hopefully people have written down each other's emails for contact, remember you can work on teams of up to 5. 5 people on the team, and you're welcome to shoot us any questions if you may have them, and registration. So have your teams built for Wednesday when we need the registration forms are due by Wednesday evening. And I think that's it.
And one other push, later on in life, when you go through job interviews and people say, tell me about a time where, you could say, well, actually, I was participating in this hackathon and I saw there were people I didn't know from a bunch of universities from across Atlantic Canada. And I reached out and I copied their email address and I didn't know them. And we worked together creatively on the contest and we won. So how good an experience is that? And how good a story
Yeah.
is that when you're going through a job interview?
It's a great story about teamwork. Employers love it. Working on team, very important. All right, well, thank you for coming for tonight's session. We had a pretty good turnout today. Hope you enjoyed our speakers and hope everyone has a good night. And if you're in Halifax, Nova Scotia, stay safe from the snow and grossness out there. Yes, stay safe in this bad weather for sure. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.